Welcome to another Less Than 10 character guide, where we cover everything you need to know about a character in less than 10 minutes. I'll cover all the skills, weapons, artifact builds, and team ideas without wasting any of your time. My name's Balthier, and I'll be your guide. Now let's get into Yelan in less than 10. Beginning with Yelan's Ascension stat, she'll be gaining crit rate as she levels up, reaching a total of 19.2% crit rate at level 90. Moving on into her normal attacks, Yelan will perform up to a 4-hit combo string. The animations are cool, but nothing important here. As for her charge attack, it's a typical bow charge attack, but with a catch. While out of combat for 5 seconds or more, Yelan enters the breakthrough state, indicated by the Hydro Bangle on her wrist beginning to glow. While in this state, her next charge attack will charge 80% faster and will fire off what's called a breakthrough barb. This special charge attack will deal AoE Hydro damage based off of Yelan's max HP. This is nice for some extra damage, but nothing too important. Do it when you can. Next up, we have Yelan's elemental skill, Lingering Lifeline. When Yelan activates her elemental skill by holding the button, Yelan will shift into this stealthy Hydro state. While in this state, Yelan will sprint much faster than usual, and when running through enemies, it will entangle them, essentially marking them to take Hydro damage based off of Yelan's max HP when it ends. Smaller enemies will be knocked up and pulled towards each other, making it decent for crowd control as well. You can reactivate the skill to end it early, and additionally, any enemies hit by this ability gives Yelan a 34% chance to reset the breakthrough state. And finally, the Elemental Burst, Depth Clarion Dice. When activating Elemental Burst, Yelan will deal AoE Hydro damage based off of Yelan's max HP, and will create this cool little floating dice called Exquisite Throw. While Exquisite Throw is active, it will follow whichever character you have active on the field, triggering 3 coordinated attacks dealing Hydro damage based off of Yelan's max HP. These attacks can trigger every 1 second when activating a normal attack, lasting for a 15-second duration. Additionally, if Yelan is on field, it will activate when Yelan's elemental skill explodes on a target. This ability is the primary reason to put Yelan on your team, as she is an excellent off-field Hydro applicator for characters like Hu Tao and Ayaka. As for her A1 passive, Turn Control, Yelan will gain more max HP for every different element on the team, going from 6% for 1, 12% for 2, 18% for 3, and 30% for 4. However, this passive could be misleading, as it seems like since 4 different elements is such a huge increase, you wouldn't want to take double Hydro. But since Hydro Resonance gives us team-wide 25% HP increase, even if every character was Hydro, she would still get 31% more HP. So it's still advised to run her with other Hydro characters if the team demands it. Then we have her A2 passive, Adapt with Ease. When Exquisite Throw from Yelan's Elemental Burst is active, it will increase the on-field character's damage by 1%, then an additional 3.5% every second until its duration ends, for a maximum of 50% damage bonus, further amplifying her support for an on-field hypercarry. As for talent priority, I would go Burst then Skill, as her Burst is the core of her supportive kit. You can ignore her normal attacks entirely unless you care about Breakthrough Barb. In short, Yelan is an amazing off-field sub-DPS with some supporting capabilities. Now let's look into what kind of weapons and artifact builds are optimal for Yelan. We're going to start off with weapons, then move on to artifact stats and builds. Starting with Yelan's signature weapon, Aqua Simulacra. Aqua Simulacra, just like all signature weapons, is tailor-made for Yelan. This weapon is just way too good on her. Starting with its crazy 88.2% crit damage substat, then its 16% HP increase, this weapon makes Yelan's off-field damage insane. Then taking this weapon even further, it gives a 20% damage bonus if there are opponents nearby, even if this character is off the field. But if you didn't get a chance to get Aqua Simulacra off its banner, don't worry, there are plenty of other options. Let's begin with additional 5-star weapon options. Elegy for the End. This bow is actually pretty crazy for Yelan, as it corrects a lot of her flaws while providing additional support to the team. With its 55.1% energy recharge stat, it will help make sure you can burst with Yelan as much as possible. And since that's her main purpose in a team, this really helps. It also allows you to replace your sands with HP percent instead to deal more damage overall. Not only that, its effect makes it so whenever your elemental skill or burst hits an opponent, even if it's off field, it will give Yelan a stack every 0.2 seconds, each stack worth 60 elemental mastery. Once Yelan reaches 4 stacks, this weapon will additionally buff the entire party, giving them 100 elemental mastery and a 20% attack buff lasting for 12 seconds. This buff can only be triggered every 20 seconds, however. This effect makes this weapon insane for all the reaction teams you want to put Yelan in. Next we have Silver Shower Heartstrings. Now this weapon isn't perfect for Yelan, as 2 out of 3 stacks of its effect won't do anything, but the fact that it has a 66.2% HP substat and triggering the 1 stack we can trigger using our elemental skill, it will give an additional 12% for a maximum of 78.2% HP, which is still very valuable in Yelan. Overall, if you have this weapon, it's a good option, but I don't suggest going out of your way for it, especially since we have a couple good 4-star options as well. For starters, Fading Twilight. This weapon was obtainable with all its refinement material in the Perilous Trial event. Since it has 30.6% energy recharge and can increase Yelan's damage by up to 28%, even while off the field, it's a pretty decent option. Every 7 seconds when attacks hit an opponent, you'll switch states, and each state increases the damage you deal by up to 3 different states. So if you happened to be around for this event, I highly recommend it if you don't have one of the 5-star options. Then lastly, we have Favonius Warbow. This weapon, like all Favonius weapons, has energy recharge as a substat sitting at 61.3%, and it offers energy particles on chance whenever you land a crit. And since it's a pretty old weapon, chances are you have refinements, and with max refinements, you'll have a 100% chance on crit to gain 6 particles for the team every 6 seconds. However, it can only trigger while on the field, so make sure you try and crit with her elemental skill or breakthrough barb. Overall, any weapons with HP percent or energy recharge substats can benefit Yelan. These are just a few standout options. Now, as for artifact stats and sets, Yelan is going to want an energy recharge or HP percent Sands, hydro damage or HP percent Goblet, and crit or HP percent Crown. Only take HP percent as a temporary substitute for these 3 slots unless you have about 150 to 200% energy recharge. Then you can take HP Sands instead. As for sets, you're definitely going to want to go for Severed Fate set since it gives 20% energy recharge on its 2-piece, and its 4-piece increases elemental burst damage based on her energy recharge, which Yelan wants a lot of. Alternatively, you can opt for a 4-piece Noblesse Oblige set to buff your on-field DPS with its attack buff after using elemental burst. As for substats, look out for energy recharge, HP percent, and crit stats. Now that we know how to build Yelan, let's take a look at some quick team ideas. So the main thing to keep in mind when placing Yelan into a team is that she's an amazing off-field sub-DPS, as well as her off-field Hydra application is really good for reactions. So the first team we'll look at is a freeze team with Ayaka and how well she performs in that. For this example, we'll go Ayaka, Yelan, Diona, and Sucrose. In this team, we'll be using Yelan's off-field Hydra application to essentially keep the opponents frozen. This way we can take full advantage of Ayaka's Blizzard Strayer set, giving her 40% crit rate for free on frozen enemies. Plus an additional 15% for Cryo Resonance, meaning that with no artifact stats, she'll still have 60% crit rate on frozen enemies. Then we have Sucrose here to shred Cryo Resistance with Viridescent Venerer. But moving on to Hyper Bloom, this is where Elegy Yelan really shines. Using Alhaitham, Yelan, Kuki, and Nahida. In this team, Yelan is really great for constantly making blooms for Kuki to trigger Hyper Bloom. And with Alhaitham as the on-field Dendro applicator, this gets even more insane. Since when Hydro triggers a bloom, it only takes a little bit of the Dendro aura, allowing you to get multiple blooms off of each Dendro aura. With Nahida, you can make sure Dendro is always the base aura, and provide the team more elemental mastery with Dendro Resonance. Furthermore, with Elegy Yelan, that's an additional 100 elemental mastery to the party and a 20% attack buff for Alhaitham. That being said, this is quite an expensive Hyperbloom team, and you can easily get away with Dendro Traveler instead of Nahida, and Alhaitham can be replaced by any on-field DPS that won't get in the way of Hyperblooms. He's just a really great pick for this team because he can constantly apply Dendro while on field. Then there's her Vaporizing teams, one being with Hu Tao. In this team, if you take Hu Tao, Yelan, Zhongli, and Farina, it gets incredibly strong. Since with the Hydro Resonance and 3 different elements, Yelan will be getting 43% more HP with her passive. Everyone else on this team really profits off HP percent as well, so Hydro Resonance is really good. And with a double Hydra application, your Hu Tao can trigger Vaporize incredibly well for some very strong hits. If you need to cheapen the team a bit, you can swap out Zhongli and Farina for Layla and Xingqiu while keeping most of the benefits that make this team good. But honestly, this is just a few of the teams Yelan can find a home in. There are so many teams that want her since her application is incredible, and paired up with Xingqiu, they can deal quite a bit of off-field damage. But just use these teams as some guidelines and make sure to try out some of your own teams and see how they work out. That being said, that was everything you need to know about Yelan in less than 10. If this guide was of any help to you, make sure to hit that like button and to pummel the subscribe button with multiple coordinated attacks from Yelan's exquisite throw. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Until next time.